welcome. Great to have you with us on Sports Hub STL following an impressive win for St. Louis University over Rhode Island at Chaffetz Arena, 81-66. Matthew Rocchio, Randy Karraker, Bob Ramsey, the voice of the Billikens on radio, will join us later after a great start. The Billikens were never caught by Rhode Island. And Matthew, a terrific start with Jimerson getting the three, then Kobe Johnson getting the three. It was 6-0. And after that, Rhode Island, they made their efforts, but the Billiken bench, which has struggled of late, came through big down the stretch, and St. Louis U able to come away with a very important victory.
Yeah, you really hit on the two biggest things from this game, which is one, Rhode Island never let up. David Green and Jamarcus Lawrence kept on hitting big shots. David Green goes 4 of 6 from deep. But the other big thing you accentuated was the Billikens bench getting involved. They got involved early and often. You saw some early mistakes from Amari McCautry. Max Picard got involved a little bit. But 13 points from Amari McCautry. He was huge throughout the entire game. His defense was crucial. His offense was big. And those 13 points, that's just the second time this entire season that a Billiken player has scored in double digits off the bench, the first time being Dylan Warlick's 10 points against Dayton. So we know how big the bench has been a problem for the Billikens this year. So getting them going with some scoring has been big.
And Josh Schertz has really eased his freshmen in, and McCautry getting a big opportunity today, as you mentioned, with 13 points. And the Billikens' best players were their best players. Robbie Avila with 22. It was Gibson Jimerson with 21, and Jimerson again coming up with big buckets for St. Louis University when they needed it. And the other part of this, Matthew, that I think that we need to touch on is that Rhode Island only scored 66 points. And the Billikens have had so much trouble recently, especially defensively in the last 5 minutes. The defense really buckled down those last 5 minutes down the stretch today.
Yeah, and the Billikens defense has been really good this year. The numbers are going to tell you that they didn't have a great game because Rhode Island was just shooting crazy and they were knocking down contested shots. But if you look at the play, especially against Sebastian Thomas, he went 3 of 14 from the field, 1 of 4 from deep, and he was never into his offense. This is a guy that on Friday, Coach Schertz was talking about him being the most likely candidate for player of the year in the A-10 conference. In this game, the Billikens flubbed him the entire time. You have to give credit to Isaiah Swope, Gibson Jimerson, Kobe Johnson, and a little bit with Amari McCautry, because they all went against the conference player of the year and absolutely shut him down this game.
And how about Gibson Jimerson? All this time at St. Louis U, 6 years, and he's never had a double-double. Finally comes up with one today.
Absolutely, yeah. His floor game, which is what Schertz refers to when he talks about his scoring, his defense, his play, as a passer, as a rebounder. He's talked about how Gibson's floor game has really jumped up this season, and tonight was a huge example of that. One, again, he's part of that trio that's guarding Sebastian Thomas so well the entire night, but also, you just said it, 11 rebounds, that's his career high. He pours in 21 points next to it. That makes him, his first ever point rebound double-double. Absolutely incredible for him. And how about this stat, Randy Karraker? The 9 games before their last matchup against Loyola Chicago, so the previous 9 games before that, he had shot 22.5% from deep on 16 of 71 threes. That's about 8 threes per game. Over the last 2 games, Gibson Jimerson has gone 10 of 24, which is 42%, and has taken almost 12 threes per game. So his efficiency's gone up, his volume's gone up, and it's been a huge reason that the Billikens won tonight.
Yeah, 16 of 71 to 10 of 24 over the last couple of games. That's the kind of thing that once you get into a tournament setting can make all the difference in the world. Now, I don't know if St. Louis U, I think they need the double bye, Matthew. I don't think that they can go on a stretch because of their lack of depth and their injuries and defections this year. I don't think that they can go on a stretch in an A-10 tournament. But if they get the double bye, that's the sort of performance when you're averaging 42% from 3. One player can make a difference in a tournament setting.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. And I wrote about it on Sports Hub STL yesterday about how important the Big Three has been for this team. And when they slack off a little bit, this team loses games. And Schertz, again, going back to Friday, talked about how they're the best Big Three in the conference, and they're one of the best Big Threes in the entire nation. They're the only Big Three averaging 16 points per game or more, all 3 of them. And so you need games like this, either from one of your Big Three, like Gibson Jimerson shooting lights out, like Robbie Avila having a big second half, or you're not going to win games like this. And again, you still needed that push from Amari McCoughtry, because one of your big three in Isaiah Swope did have a rough game, just 8 points on 10 shots. So you did need somebody to kind of fill in that third big three, and that's what happens when you have such a short roster.
Matthew, what sort of confidence do you have down the stretch? I look at today's game. You get a win over Rhode Island. You go to Davidson. Davidson is very good, but beatable. Then you get Loyola here, and you should have had Loyola there by all rights. Then Dayton is going to be a hard one to win, right? And then you get Duquesne at home. I could see in the last 4 games, I could see St. Louis, you getting 3 of them and getting into that double bye situation, finishing in 4th place in the conference. Could you see that? Am I off base here?
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. And the tricky part is that everybody else vying for that 4th seed doesn't have the toughest schedule in the world, and neither do the Billikens. And so it looks like you're probably going to have to go 4-1 over this last 5 games. Now, you've already knocked down 1, so like you're saying, you need to go 3-1 over these next 4 games, and that's doable, and it's probably what needs to be done if you have any chance at securing the top 4. Again, Dayton's going to be the tough game. If you can win that one, obviously it's you're playing with house money at that point. But this is a good start. But yeah, these next 4 games are important, because when you have that short roster, when you have that short bench, taking away margin for errors, as in like a whole 40-minute game you have to win, that's a big deal.
Billikens win it today over Rhode Island, 81-66 over at Chaffetz Arena. That's Matthew Rocchio at Chaffetz, and I'm Randy Karraker. I want to touch on a couple of other things from the bench. And you mentioned McCoughtry, who, because you expect Avila to do his thing and Jimerson to do his thing and Kobe Johnson and Swope to do their thing, you need at this time of year sometimes to get a surprise. We look at Mizzou, how they have a different star every night. And because of what we had at the beginning of the season, because we thought that Kellen Thames was going to be available, because we thought there was going to be an ascending Larry Hughes, those guys are no longer with the team. So other people need to step up and do their thing. McCoughtry is getting a rare opportunity in college basketball these days to play big minutes in big games, and he took advantage today. I wonder, though, Matthew, if there are any other guys, bench players, young bench players that SLU has that could do what McCoughtry did today.
Yeah, I mean, I think Max Picard is one you got to put in there, just because he brings something to the SLU team that they don't already have, which is he's almost 7 feet tall. He's a shot blocker. He's a big body that can rebound, but he can also run the floor. And more than anything, I think the wild card that makes Picard so useful potentially is that he can play next to Robbie. So you can get a second big on the floor next to Robbie. You can't do that with Killian Brockhoff, because now there's no one to guard the other forward for the other team. And so Picard gives you more matchup flexibility, which is a huge deal. But again, the shot blocking, the fact that he made it 3 tonight, I don't know if we're going to see that again, but he was competitive in rebounds, pulled down an offensive rebound. That's the kind of stuff you have to see from Max Picard. That was big. And again, Dylan Warlick also pulled down an offensive rebound, knocked down a 3. That's the stuff we've seen from him since December, and it was big tonight.
Are you surprised, by the way, you talk about a big hitting a 3. Are you surprised that here we are in almost March, and teams are still allowing Robbie Avila to sit out there alone in three-point land? It boggles my mind that they aren't challenging the 3 more. I know they do 50% of the time, but man, he gets a lot of open 3 looks, doesn't he?
Yeah, and you got to credit the Billikens offense for finding those looks today. And also, when he goes 3 for 12, I guess you're going to take it, because for a while there, I think he was 1 for 10. He definitely started 0 for 4. And then he hit 1, and then it took him a little while. So I think he was 1 for 10 and a point. And so if he's not hitting them, yeah, it makes sense. At the same time, he doesn't punish you with speed, so you're always going to have your slowest defender on him. And so with the way that the Billikens are able to create these little flares for him in the top of the key, the pick and pops that he usually gets, if you're not going to put somebody smaller on him, he's going to get those 3-point opportunities. And teams have just taken the trade-off, which is we'll either put a big on him and we'll win down low, we'll put a small on him, we'll take away the 3s, and we might lose down low a little bit.
And he hit one with about 5 minutes left. And you're right, he was 1 for 10, wound up 3 for 12. But man, the one that he hit, the big one down the stretch, I think it was a 6-point game at that time, and it went back to 9 because of Avila's 3.
Yeah, and that's the thing that Robbie Avila, you got to give credit to. Even when he struggled this year, he's hit big shots. Same thing with Isaiah Swope. I know that the conference schedule has not gone well for him. Again, another below 10-point scoring game tonight for Isaiah. The conference schedule hasn't gone well for him, but he has hit big shots in big moments. In fact, he had a big shot tonight when the Billikens were kind of teetering on that 10, 11-point lead. He gets a steal, misses a three-pointer, and then comes down the very next possession, and in the flow of the offense gets an open three in the corner and knocks it down, and that really broke things open. I think that might have taken it to a 14-point game, and they never. I mean, that was really the point of no return for the game. Isaiah Swope hitting that three. So even when these two stars have struggled, they've come up with big shots, and tonight was another good example.
Yeah, and that was that Avila three-pointer was later than I thought. It was with 1:39 remaining in the game that he hit kind of the dagger for St. Louis U over Rhode Island. And St. Louis U snaps the losing streak. They're back on the beam and now have an opportunity to move up in the conference. I would not have thought that the conference would be like this. The 8-6 would have you in a position, 8-6 in the conference. Ton of parity here. I think this is a great year for SLU under a first-year coach Josh Schertz to be. They're better than mediocre. This was their 15th win today, but they have an opportunity that I don't think that they would have had in a lot of years in the Atlantic 10.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of people are going to laugh at what you just said, Randy, because there's a lot of people who are angry about how mediocre a lot of the Atlantic 10 has been. They had a really soft non-conference schedules. The entire league had bad non-conference schedules except for Dayton. And then Dayton slipped up and lost games. And so it became a one-bid league by like the first week of or second week of December. And so a lot of people are kind of ticked by the fact that it's opened things up like that. But like you said, it's a good thing for the Billikens. They slipped up. They had so many injuries, players leaving the program and things like that, that now they have a chance to make a run to that fourth spot, get that double bye, make the run to the A-10 tournament, and be the one A-10 team in the tournament. They have a chance to do it, and if they do, we won't talk about all the other BS that happened in the season.
No, and here's the way I look at this: is St. Louis going to win a national championship? No, but can they benefit their program greatly, especially under a first-year coach, by making the tournament, by getting extra practice time, by adding a few funds from the NCAA tournament into the program? Absolutely. And especially with a guy like McCautry today and the young players and guys that'll be back, if you get experience in the NCAA tournament, first of all, have that winning experience, and this is all, we're working way ahead here, but if you can get winning experience in the conference tournament and play games in the big dance, then all of a sudden Josh Schertz has an easier time heading into next year because the players understand what it takes to win those big games. And that's a hard thing to figure out in the sport, is how to go about winning big games. And I think regardless of the level of play that your conference provides, I think if you get to the NCAA tournament, there's no negatives to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also something you have to factor in at all times now, Randy, is how it affects their ability to talk to players in the portal. Because I know that's going to be a big thing. They want to add shooters coming up in the portal. And so that's going to be a big thing. And so showing these guys, hey, if you come here, you're playing 20, 25 minutes, you're a big role player on a team that's playing in the tournament. That's a big selling point for NIL. And they're going to need to get 2 or 3, solid role players, maybe one starter out of the portal this year. And that's kind of what their goal is going to be. And to be a tournament team makes the job so much easier.
I thought one of the cool things about today too, and yes, there should be a level of desperation, but one thing about Josh Schertz is that this team, I don't think there's been a game where I thought, boy, their effort really wasn't there. Their compete really wasn't there. They keep playing hard and they don't play down to the level of competition. Rhode Island, they still won only one road game. It would have been really easy for St. Louis University to walk into this one, and it could have stayed tight for the first half and they could have pulled away. But as we mentioned right off the top of the show, they score early, they pull away. It got a little bit tighter later. But my point is that SLU didn't play down to the level of the competition today. They started the game hot, and they pretty much maintained an unthreatened position throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. They haven't killed teams. They haven't ended games. They haven't done the Doug Armstrong, a knife in the eye. They haven't put their neck on teams' throats. And today it seemed like that was going to be another game where it was just 8-point lead, 8-point lead, 10-point lead, and then all of a sudden it evaporates like that and the game's completely changed. But today they finally did it. They took it from an 8-9-point lead, finally stepped on the throat, took it to 12 to 14, and and they were able to close it out, playing around that 17, 16 mark for the last minute or two, and then a 15-point win. And, yeah, that's a big thing. I think one of the reasons they haven't been able to put teams away is that they're not great in transition. So when you get those turnovers that seem to be backbreaking for other teams, the Billikens don't score the big 2 or the big 3 off those turnovers the way other teams do. I think that's what holds them back. But tonight they got those big shots and they took that big lead.
If you're just joining us on Sports Hub STL, this is the Billiken post game, and St. Louis U routed Rhode Island 81-66. Kalu Anya with a couple of points. Robbie Avila with a Billiken high 22, followed by Jimerson, who had 21. Jimerson, by the way, 7 of 18 from the floor and 5 of 14, Matthew, from three-point land. You mentioned how much better he's been from three-point land in the last couple of games. Swope got off to a good start, finished with 8. Kobe Johnson had a three-pointer right off the bat. He finished with 7. By the way, that was his only three-point attempt of the day, 1 of 1, and it was the second bucket of the game for the Billikens.
Yeah, and Kobe Johnson's been so much better over the last few weeks. He's been comfortable, and really that shot shows. And I know it's his only three-pointer of the game, but really he just stepped into that one. He was wide open. It was the perfect confidence, stroked it right out of the gate, and it really did set the pace for the Billikens. And Kobe Johnson, you have to give credit. Anytime we're talking about a good Kobe Johnson game, it usually means he played great defense. And again, I know I've already talked about it, but the most likely conference player of the year in the A-10, Sebastian Thomas, finishes with 8 points and 9 assists, but you also forced 4 turnovers. He goes 3 of 14 from the field, and it's all because of the job by Isaiah Swope, Gibson Jimerson, and Kobe Johnson guarding him. So, yeah, Kobe was huge, and he's been a huge addition to this team.
And the best bench performance, by the way. Yeah. We do welcome you to be a part of this. And by the way, we want you to join us at our Sports Hub STL kickoff party. It's coming up Thursday night. A lot of people are going to be there. Our team is going to be there at the new Hot Shots location on Lindbergh, Lime. We'll have the Blues of Washington on the big TV at the new Hot Shots, and you can be the Sports Hub STL team, chances to win tickets, merchandise, and more. It's going to be Thursday night, and it is going to be a party. Hot Shots, home of STL sports fans since 1990. Hey, there's Bob Ramsey, the radio voice of St. Louis University basketball. Rammer, how you doing?
Well, pretty good after a terrific victory here at the Jewel of Midtown. It was a really well played game. Coach Schertz just told us on the radio side that it was the best team victory. Everyone involved, sharing the ball, connected offensively and defensively. He called it the best team win of the season.
And that's what you want to do, right? As a new coach, as a first-year coach, this is the time of year when you want to have your team playing that sort of basketball so that they can prepare for a tournament, because that's what you need to win tournaments. And when you mention that, a season high 21 from the bench, that's what he's talking about, right? Not only that, but they played connected basketball.
Yeah, he was able to get performance off the bench like you haven't had really since the very beginning of the season, those first 3-4 games. And the transition basketball, some of the highlights coming from that, if you folks get a chance to look, the SLU people do a great job putting those highlight packages together, and you'll see the transition basketball moving down the floor, 2, 3, 4 players touch the ball in transition before they get the open look they want. And those are the kind of things that really make coaches very, very pleased.
Yeah, and Rammer, I think another thing that we have to look at is, and Matthew and I were just talking about this off the top, your best players have to be your best players, right? And Avila, right, even though this was not his best game, but he's played very well of late. But Avila and Jimerson, at the beginning of the season, those were the two guys we were looking at, and they're the ones that come through on February 22nd.
Yeah, you know, Robbie's shooting numbers were not exactly what he wanted. He still had 22 points. But the thing that's important, thing that's important about Robbie, and you saw it, when he comes out of the game, there's a tendency for the offense to stagnate a little bit. Everything runs through him. So even if he's not shooting it great, he still makes things go. And I think that's really important to recognize from Robbie. And he understands how important he is to the team.
And what about Jimerson? Here he is in his 6th year, his first double-double as a member of the Billikens.
It just shows his continued growth from when he first started out as a freshman and got injured to where he is now. And I think you see the rebounds in the double-double. The amazing thing to him is how relentless he is on the floor without the basketball, sprinting to spots throughout the game, start to finish. And for you kids, little league kids, and even high school players, come watch Jimerson, not just when he's got the ball, more importantly, when he doesn't have the ball. Really, he's one of the remarkable all-time Billiken greats.
All right, let's touch on a couple. And Matthew, are you still with us?
He's probably in the news conference.
Oh, okay.
He's probably talking to Coach Schertz.
Okay, good. I want to get a couple of our YouTube chat people in here. Rick Majerus's towel. That's a great name. Just to get to 11-7, that should be good enough for the double bye. You think 11-7 gets you into the top 4 here?
Well, let me look at the standings. Earl reconnected those. You got 4 games left. You're a game behind Loyola. That's what you really got to look at, not the raw number, but the people ahead of you. It's great that you're able to create a little separation and keep Rhode Island back behind you. Now everybody behind you has 2 games under 500 in the league. So you have really between Dayton, Loyola, St. Joe's, and St. Louis, 4 teams for 2 spots and the double bye. So
and you have to get Loyola here, right? Because we should have beat them there, right? You got to get Loyola here.
Certainly could have. I don't know if should's the right word, but yeah, you could have. You had the game there. You could have. That was a winnable game. So yeah. So now as you look at what the Billikens need to do, you go to Davidson. So you take a look at Davidson, you say, well, they're 6-8, but all those teams are 6-8 behind you, and you're playing them on their home court. But is it a winnable game? Yes. Then Loyola at home, winnable here. You'd like to think so. You go to Dayton, that's a tall order, and then Duquesne comes here. Can you win the games you're supposed to win? That's what it'll come down to.
And 11-7, that's 3-1 in the Final Four. If you would have asked me before today's game, I would have said probably not. But after the way they performed today, with the performance they got from the bench today, I feel much better about these last 4 than I did 3 hours ago.
Well, you do, and then you also have to remember away, SLU is only 3-6. So can you steal one of those road games? That would be great. But coaches hate when guys like us talk about this. They put a game plan together to win every game. So you see what you can do. But yeah, you've got, like I said, you've got 4 teams for those last 2 double bye spots, and every one of them thinks they can win it. And that's why it's fun and why every game counts.
And Rammer, playing in the tournament in and of itself for this particular group, I think is going to be valuable. I think every game that they play with meaning for this group in Josh Schertz's first year is going to be, and it's going to be beneficial for them as they head into his career as the St. Louis U head coach.
Well, yeah, and can you finish strong and sort of kind of put your stamp? Here's what we did in our first year. Ran into a lot of troubles with injury and illness and defection, but we were able to continue to get better even through all those things. And can you stamp that identity and say, this is who we are as a program? I think you're right. As you hopefully finish strong in these next 4, finish strong in the conference tournament, and then just see what's there in front of you.
Hey, Bob, our buddy Eric Sontag said he loves to see Robbie Avila being aggressive. He's seen every game he's played with the Billikens. Has his game, and he's dealt with his injuries, but has his game changed over the course of the season? Was it different today, for example, than it was in the last 2?
Gosh, I'm not so sure about that. Robbie knows what Josh Schertz wants, knows how to play the game. And I think maybe there are times when he can be a little more selfish, but when it comes to basketball terms, being selfish doesn't necessarily translate to being a negative. And where he's looking to score a little bit and then find players when that's the better option. And I think that's the key for Robbie.
All right, and Rammer, I want to touch on a couple of guys that got time today. First of all, it was really cool to see some of the walk-on type guys get into the games, but we haven't seen as much of Amari McCautry. He earned his time today. What'd you think of the freshman's performance?
Truly remarkable and the game changer. He was the player of the game, and it made a difference. Plays he made seemed to be always at critical times when Rhode Island was trying to make a run. He's got the wingspan. He's got the athleticism. He's figuring it out. And they need Amari McCautry down the stretch. On the road recently, he had a couple games where he wasn't very good. Coach Schertz mentioned that to us on the radio postgame show. So if Amari can do that, then those are the kinds of things this team needs to finish these last 4 games in the regular season, to finish strong in the conference schedule. But what he can do on both ends of the floor, I think, is critical.
And then the other thing I wanted to ask about that bench, and Matthew was talking, because we were talking about, okay, you didn't have guys that you expected at the beginning of the season, people like Hughes and Thames, and that's water under the bridge. But who are the guys that can step up and fill some roles off of the bench and be relied upon? Aside from, and hopefully McCautry's that guy. Matthew Rocchio said, Max Picard. Are there any other guys on the bench? And you watch practice all the time. You see this team. Are there any other guys you like to think could become reliable?
There are no other guys on the bench. That's it. You named them. Kelly Brockhoff is the only other guy who could find some minutes along the way at 6'10", but that's it. That is the bench.
So we are where we are.
Yeah.
Hey, none of the starters are going to be complaining about their minutes.
That's right. That's exactly right. So but being able to fold those guys in, where really for a month or so, coach didn't feel comfortable doing so. So if they can elevate, and he told us the last 2 days of practice that the second team in scrimmage time actually beat the first team. So that's a really good sign that those guys are coming along.
And they had some time off. It was nice that they didn't have to play during the week because of the lack of depth that they're experiencing now. But as they traverse these last couple of weeks of the season, they're right back at it on Wednesday, I guess, Tuesday at Davidson, right? Tuesday night at Davidson. Yeah, it's. I guess my expectations shouldn't be through the roof, because it's really hard to bounce back when you have such a shorthanded bench.
Well, and it's hard, as we've seen specifically, it's hard to finish games. Coach Schertz told us a few minutes ago that he thought this 8-day layoff was as much to help mental focus as it was dead legs. And I think that kind of laser focus at the end of games, that there is the physical mental connection between fatigue. What's the old line? Correct me, because I know you've got a better memory than me, Randy. And that is fatigue makes cowards of us all. Isn't that the old line?
There you go.
And I wouldn't say cowardice as it applies to the Billikens, but the focus leaves and you got real problems connecting on plays and bad turnovers.
Rammer, Rhode Island came in and they've only won one road game this year. That one thing that the Schertz also is building, and every coach wants to, is the team seems to be getting better and better at home and protecting the court at Chaffetz Arena.
I don't know if it is strictly here at Chaffetz. We'll learn against Davidson, won't we? We'll learn on Tuesday if the Billikens, that it's not just a home thing, that it is something that will become a trend and an important trend down the stretch. So I think you're right. That will be a key thing to watch on Tuesday.
81-66 Billikens over Rhode Island. Now, as great as the game was, and we didn't get an opportunity to see at halftime, but apparently this was one of the more epic baby races in the history of the baby race. Starts
and stops, and Earl Austin Jr., my partner, had to mention that he did mention that one of the young ladies sandbagged the leader out of the gate, sandbagged, and he distracted him. He stopped at midcourt, turned back and looked, and they were laughing, and then she took off and won. So This is a young lady that I think has figured out life already.
Pretty good. Pretty impressive. Pretty good. Bob, this is the first time we've done a post-game show, and it's the first time you and I have worked together in a really long time. And I haven't had a chance to talk to you. And I want the people that are tuned in now, we do appreciate you tuning in, and feel free to leave us a chat question or comment here at YouTube. But I want to know what your overall impression, now that you've seen November, December, January, most of February from Josh Schertz. What sort of a head coach St. Louis U has here?
With a completely different bedside manner, completely different. He reminds me of Rick Majerus, and his focus on the analytics and understanding the game and being able to communicate it to players. He's so detail oriented. It's very Majerus-like.
That is about as high a compliment as you or I could give a coach, because we might have thought the late great Rick Majerus, he was a spectacular coach, and he had his idiosyncrasies without question. But he was also, from a technical standpoint, probably as good as anybody who ever lived, right? The amount of other coaches had for Rick Majerus was remarkable.
I think you're right, Randy, and that's why I choose my words carefully, but that's what it reminds me of. And when you ask him a question, he's got an answer, and a very specific one. He's really good. And the key is then you got to get players, and you got to get the right kind of players that you can communicate with and can get those philosophies across and understand how to play the way Josh Schertz wants you to play to win.
Well, it's interesting with because Travis Ford was here and coached players hard, and Conzo Martin was at Mizzou and coached players hard. Now he's back in the business at Missouri State. But one thing about Dennis Gates and Josh Schertz is that they appear to be guys who are kind of the Pied Piper for their players. They're the same guy, and again, UC practice all the time. Same guy that recruits the players is the guy that's coaching them on the practice floor.
His, I use the term bedside manner. His manner with working with players is, I have been doing it a long time. I mean, going really 45 years of college basketball, all the way back to my first college gig with Centenary College in Shreveport, Louisiana. I've never seen a coach communicate this way with players, that he's in charge, it's his team, yet he communicates on the player's level. It's a different animal. Like I said, I go back to men and women's coaches, and at SLU, we'll go through them: Grauer, Spoonhour, Romar, Soderberg, Majerus, Cruz, Ford. I've never seen a coach that communicates in this exact style. Not that other coaches aren't great communicators. That's not my point. But his style is completely different.
And it's necessary now. Ken Hitchcock, I asked him one time about the difference between players when he first started coaching and when he was coaching the Blues. He said, and this is so typical from a coaching standpoint, but he said it used to be that you could tell a player, hey, run through a wall for me. Now, when you tell a player run through a wall for me, they ask why. And that's the communication part of it, right? That you're talking about with Josh Schertz. He can say, okay, run through a wall for me. They'll ask why, and he'll have a good answer for it.
That's starting to get into some specifics that I don't know that I really have, and I don't want to put something on Coach Schertz that may not be completely accurate. But again, I think it's communication and to get players to understand the way Coach Schertz wants the game played. And part of that is finding the right kinds of players as well. So I don't want to put things on him and that style that may not be completely accurate, but I do know this: it's really different and it's really fun to watch.
Yeah, it is fun to watch, and I know Jay Billis said great things about him when he was hired, that he was one of the best offensive minds in all of college basketball. So St. Louis U lucky to have Schertz, and lucky to get him for a victory today, 81-66 over Rhode Island. Big takeaway, Rammer. If you're going to write a headline for tomorrow here on Sports Hub STL, what's the big takeaway here?
Amari McCautry leads a newfound Billiken bench to victory.
There we go. And if we can get that Billiken bench to perform well again, at Davidson. That'll be great. Remember, are you going to be over at Hot Shots on Thursday night for our kickoff party?
You never know. You never know. I may show up. A good little nosh here and there. It could be a lot of fun. No, I'll be there. It'll be fun. It'll be great.
All right.
I hope everybody shows.
Yeah, me too. And we're looking forward to it. And we'll have Blues hockey. And, of course, we'll have the Blues Sports Hub STL post-game show over at Hot Shots that night. Rammer, thanks for joining us from the sideline there. And, again, there it is, the Sports Hub STL kickoff party, Thursday, February 27th, 6 to 9:30 at the new Hot Shots location on Lindbergh in Limay. And we'd love to have you join all of us there. Rammer, have a good one and be safe driving home. And we will be hearing from you as the Billikens get ready to take on Davidson next week.
Feels like old times, Randy. I love it. See you, buddy.
It is. We'll be doing a lot. All right. Thank you, sir. Bob Ramsey, the voice of the Billikens, longtime voice of the Billikens on our Sports Hub STL Billiken postgame show. Bills win it 81-66 over Rhode Island, 15th win of the year for the Billikens, who are now 15-12, 8-6 in the conference, and they control their own destiny, as it were, for making it to a 4-team double bye in the conference. Finish in the top 4 in the A10, and you get a double bye once you play in that tournament. So that's what they're looking forward to. Davidson is up next. Again, Avila, 22 points. Gibson Jimerson with 21, and then Amari McCautry. The story of this game, as Rammer said, 13 points off the bench. The freshman with a huge performance off the bench for St. Louis U, a very necessary performance for St. Louis University. I'm Randy Karraker. Thanks to you for joining us here on Sports Hub STL. We've got a lot more coming your way because tonight you've got Missouri as they will be playing Arkansas, and we'll have the postgame show for that. We'll have the postgame show with Matthew Rocchio getting ready for St. Louis City SC as they open up their season against Colorado, and the Blues playing Winnipeg tonight over at Enterprise Center. We'll have a postgame show for that too. So 5 different postgame shows, and if you missed one of them, you can see them all here on YouTube on the Sports Hub STL page, and I will see you on Monday morning at 10. Have a great night, everybody.